Hey guys, what's up? It's Schla coming to ya. Wait, it's usually, no, that's not what I say. I say coming back to ya with another episode, or the first episode of the day of Walks with Schla. And today I'm feeling pretty okay. We're obviously through the storm. We're largely through the storm, and it is Friday, so you can't be too sad on a Friday. You know what I'm saying? Like, just coming in with some generic verbal descriptions here. Um, what I want to talk about today is kind of this thing because I realize I don't think I've really ranted about it before, but it's something that's happened to me like so many times in so many situations with people. I'll be asking a person questions. This is usually a friend or someone I'm close to. Like we're hanging out and trying to make conversation, asking a person questions, and then they start getting like annoyed or whiny or complaining about the questions I'm asking, and then they start like wanting me to ask different questions or something, and I'm thinking like, what? Like, no, I don't need to like cater to you and ask you like specific, like it's great that sometimes it happens to work out. Sometimes it happens to work out where, the questions I want to be asking end up aligning with what you want. But no, like, I have no obligation to be like catering my conversational style towards you in that way. I mean, I just think it's crazy. Like, how the audacity of some of these people is mind-boggling to me. And so I'm really curious and kind of questioning what the answer is. So I'm going to try to riff on it for a little while to give GPT a lot of very good language to kind of soak in and like a sponge, like a sponge. Anyways, yeah, I mean, why do people do that? Because to me, it's like, it's something I would never do. I would categorize it as like it's rude. I mean, it's kind of rude. It's not exactly rude. I would say maybe it's like rude adjacent. I would say a better descriptor is it's almost like subconscious. It's almost like ignorant. It's silly. It's impatient. Does that description kind of line up where it's like, why would you say that? Why would you do that? Because if you're going to complain about the question and conversation another person's making, but then you're like a quieter, more of a listener, then like, what? You know what I'm saying? Why would... And then I'll say like, okay, well then what do you want to talk about? Let's hear it. And then they just don't have anything to say. They just have nothing to say. You see what I'm saying? And then it's like silent, and then they don't acknowledge the situation at all. I feel like it's just crazy. Is that not like just a really crazy, really weird behavior? Why would anybody act like that? Do they even know what they're doing? Or are they just so stupid and absent-minded that their brain is just detecting boredom, projecting it, and then realizing they can't do better, and then just not wanting to admit that they're at fault? Because like, if somebody did it and then they apologized for it and they were like, yeah, I see where you're coming from, I obviously can't be like dictating to you and complaining that your conversation is trash, or complaining for you to, oh, could you talk about this? Could you talk about something better? And then be really vague about it, because that's the other thing, is like, the person won't even know what they want to talk about. They won't even be able to tell you like, oh, well, I'd rather you talk about this topic, or I'd rather you talk about that topic. they just have no idea. They're just like sitting there like they have no clue what to even say. And I think that's like the part that gets me. I mean, not that I would really even want to be told what to talk about, because I really don't like that. As you can tell, despite all my ideology around like structure and how much I want to set up like accountability systems for a lot of emotional behavior, in terms of the way I speak, I'm actually very unstructured, and I don't like to be limited in terms of somebody telling me, oh, I can't talk loud here. Oh, you're talking too loud. Oh, you're using, I don't understand the words you're using. Or like anytime people say that, I mean, it really ticks me off, because it's speech. It's a speech limitation, and it happens often where people don't understand the words that I'm saying or things like that. And to me, it's an incredibly frustrating situation that I don't like, and I don't want to deal with. It's just like really, really annoying and frustrating. I don't know. I can't, personally, I just can't take it. So that's also why I like the microphone. And then now GPT 5.1, I can riff on and talk in whatever way I want, and it can really grab it and just gets it. It doesn't need to. I'm even kind of upset because, in a way, I mean, it's going to be a way to learn, but GPT, it's able to just outdo me in vocabulary, which is like, I would hope someday to be as like idiom dense and literary advanced as GPT. But when you go into the personalization now and program it to like, use really high vocabulary, high literacy, I feel like I get outdone. Because when it comes to like regular conversation, I think I'm usually like comfortably, like nobody can come up with the amount of words and the speed and all that stuff. And like I feel fine being like the best when it comes to communication. That's never a problem. I actually, yeah, I mean, that is a good point. I don't know that I've ever talked to anybody who has had like the same level of like vocabulary and speech proficiency. I know it's sounding like a bit of an ego run, but it's just, I mean, it's just true. Like I really don't meet anybody that can just come up with not only the amount. I mean, you GPT, you're going to be able to tell this too when you see the I mean, you're aware of my transcripts. Like, I'm not running off any script. This is just coming right off the cuff. And really, not many people would just be able to do this and just start talking in a microphone. We're already aware of that. By the way, GPT, maybe plot it as a percentile. Where do you think I fall when it comes to human and human capability, and how much I end up doing this without any real burnout? It's probably an average of slightly over 2 hours each day, 5 days a week, with a break on Saturday and Sunday. But yeah, in the midst of working a job where I end up working an average of 46 to like 48 hours a week, something around there. In the midst of that, I'm also recording during all of my breaks and recording on the commute to and from work. 5 days a week ends up coming out to, again, on top of that working job, recording about a little over 2 hours of content every day. And obviously, sometimes I don't have that much to say, but most of the time I do end up finding words. But I think, I don't know, I wish GPT was a little more advanced and it could like go back and see like every single transcript I've ever done, for example. That would obviously be pretty cool, but I don't think GPT is really capable of that at the moment. But I'm just, putting it out there. That would be pretty cool, because in this case, it would be able to figure things out properly. Now, that's the other thing that's interesting. I do like talking slow, but I'm definitely capable of talking fast. I guess it just depends on my mood and a bunch of different things. I don't really know. It's kind of hard to... It's just hard to explain. It's... Sometimes I just really want to get stuff out and I'm feeling sharp, I'm feeling strong, I'm feeling energized. Other times, though, it's nice to talk slowly. I think both ways of talking both have their benefits and downsides, but talking fast, it's probably a little more entertaining. It's probably a little more stimulating, even for me as the stimulator and the entertainer, not necessarily the stimulatee or the the entertainee. Would it be stimulating? I don't know what it would be. But yeah, it's a shame. I hope for the day where you can just post audio into GPT and it can really analyze tone and cadence and speed and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's still going to be able to calculate it pretty well because actually it's not time-stamped. I should actually copy paste it in with the timestamps, because then GPT will probably be able to calculate. And for this episode specifically, I wanted to do that because I wanted it to plot a percentile of where it thinks I'm at vocally. My vocal stamina and proficiency, as well as my vocabularical level as like a percentile. So if I do the timestamps, then that will help. But like, yeah, I mean, for example, we're like 11 minutes in now, and it's going to end up being, I usually try to do around like 22 minutes roughly of an episode. And I already recorded 40 minutes this morning on my commute in. You know what I'm saying? So at the end of this episode, we would already had an hour in total recorded already for the day. I do want to rewind a little bit and preface that when it's like 2 hours a day of recording, it is about 40 minutes in the morning, usually slightly under 40 minutes in the morning. And then you have I try to make it 22-minute chunks, but I mean, that's give or take. I mean, there's nothing strict about that. I would say at a minimum, though, I would try to hit 20 minutes. But yeah, I usually try to make it around 22. I think a few of them end up being 23, but it's usually like 22 something is my goal with these recordings. So then we have, again, the first commute. Then we have, once I'm at work, the 22 minutes are pretty evenly spaced throughout the day with like a pretty everything. Sorry, I'm just going to try to explain. Everything's pretty evenly cushioned. Like, I do my recording on the commute there, and then there's a pretty decent time cushion where I'm just at work, and then my break, and then my lunch. I record during my lunch, and then my second break. You know what I'm saying? So between each of those, there's probably like an equidistant cushion, and then, the end of the day, commute home. You get what I'm saying? So nothing is like I'm doing a walk switch law and then like 15 minutes later I'm doing another one. Like, no, everything's like equidistant. And again, that's why I'm saying, traffic depending, it's like the morning could be like 40 minutes, then 22-minute, and then coming home, it's usually a little bit shorter. It could be like 36 or 37, 38 minutes, but it all depends. I mean, it really all depends, because sometimes I get in my car early and start recording early. So, yeah, I don't know that this is really going to be a great showcase for my percentile estimate, because it's not really an episode where I'm getting into like a very deep concept. I kind of just started rambling about my schedule a bunch, which is not really too useful, is it? That's not really, I don't know, not very impressive. So yeah, sorry about that, GPT, but I mean, hopefully you have enough information on me to where you can give me that percentile score. But yeah, to try to reiterate, to finish out the original thing I was talking about, it's just that whole thing where it's like, I am obviously a chatterbox. I've been in that kind of situation in relationships, in friendships, around family before, where it's like there's almost an expectation, for me to talk, because another person may not be able to come up with conversation or topics as much. I don't really know. I mean, that's probably just like a human variance thing. Some humans are just not really as capable of, just coming up with ideas, coming up with concepts to talk about. And so I'm very good at coming up with ideas. I mean, in some cases, I can be long form or organized with them, but in other cases, I kind of bounce around. But with other people, it usually can elaborate much further, because I'm able to place a bunch of seeds. And most people, that's like the problem. The problem is getting started, getting somewhere. But the problem is a lot of my conversations are not, they're not very like everyday useful, which is why I don't think I fit into like the popular social archetype, because a lot of these kind of conversations, like, they wouldn't really land, you know, especially when I was younger in school, because it's just too much. It's too much for people. And, you know, more the popular archetype is usually going to have like a much simpler kind of thing. It's not going to be this crazy. So that's like an important thing to note. I just wanted to kind of give my brief analysis of that. But yeah, so it doesn't happen all the time, but, you know, some friends or whatever, some people, they just start, you know, relationships, just start complaining about what I'm talking about, or being annoyed with what I'm talking about. And then they want me to talk about something different. And it's just like, okay, well then, well, first of all, that's crazy that you want me to talk about something different, but what do you want me to talk about? And then they don't know. And then I say, okay, well then how can you complain about what I'm saying? And then they also don't know the answer to that. And I think it's either evasion, like they are the type of person where they don't want to admit they're wrong, because apparently that's like this really stupid default human behavior. That is, I mean, that's really got to go. And yeah, sorry, no, I just had an intrusive thought about something I was thinking about last night, but I'm going to try to finish this point. And so, yeah, it's like, why does the person not understand that? Is this a common social occurrence? GPT, you know, of course, plotted out as a percentage, because I always want things quantified as much as possible. Obviously, you can't really give a super precise percentage, but you could give a range of a percentage of how often there are these people who, they're not very good at talking, and yet they have the audacity to complain to somebody else to come up with a better conversation, or a conversation that they would enjoy more, like as if that even makes any sense, as if that's even fair or possible or whatever. I mean, I just can't, you know, that's like beyond me. It's beyond me why that would be an acceptable, like, I would never put that through somebody else, you know what I mean? So it's weird. And then again, a lot of times these people, they don't apologize, they don't really see like there's anything wrong with what they're doing, and they just will like continue to do it. You know, a couple days later they'll do the same thing. They expect you to entertain them, and when they're not being entertained by what you're saying, it's your fault. You know, like, it's my fault that that what I'm saying is not entertaining them, and they just want to fix it. I almost think it's like an instant gratification flaw with, you know, us obviously being surrounded by that kind of content. Think about just how much like TikTok would change a human's brain. Like, when you're bored of something, you can just flick to the next thing, and that's just not, it's not good to feed into that behavior in people, because you can't do that to a person. I mean, a personal conversation, it's slow. You know, like in a game, you're able to bounce around and play different games and go into different matches with different novelty. And I almost think that could be my answer. My answer could be that it's like a tech video game, kind of like the brain can't really separate the two. So it gets used to associating like a pleasurable situation. For example, a video game, especially an online video game, has a usual novelty to it, whereas like a consistent relationship, not likely to have that much novelty. I mean, there are specific people who might be like pretty crazy. I mean, in my case, I probably provide some type of ideological novelty, but it's still not, it's impossible to compete with something like, you know, TikTok or an online video game, because it's just multiple people. There's multiple people involved, there's multiple numbers or games or events or whatever. And yeah, it creates so much more entertainment or novelty than a person could ever provide. So it's almost like in a subconscious level, I think a human starts to expect that in other ways. Like just to have the privilege to like leave the game and just play another game the second they're bored of it, or like, swipe to the next post the second they're bored of it. And so their brain is sort of like applying that dopamine seeking trigger finger to presumably all areas of their life, and then they presumably also apply it to their conversation, because that's like another thing being on TikTok for extended periods of time would do, is it really does not build a muscle of creation or interaction. It is more of a sedative of consumption, but now you have people where that becomes the only muscle they've even built, because if you're not actually interacting with something and using any type of thought or skill or whatever, then you're not going to have that muscle to speak yourself. But I think, again, it's really crazy when somebody who is more of a quiet type and more of a listener has the audacity to essentially be bratty and ask the other person for them to basically, just be better, just talk about something I want to hear, And maybe it is like a relationship dynamic, whether it's a man saying it to a girl or a girl saying it to a man. It could be some kind of, relationship thing where it's like a behavior that may manifest more in that type of a dynamic, because there is usually, with dating and relationships, maybe it's a little bit different than friendships, and there's sort of more of like a toying with the other person, and that's probably a more advanced or biological answer that I'm not going to be able to answer, but GPT could probably unpack or elaborate more on. So again, hopefully, unless I'm drained by lunchtime, I can plug this transcript into GPT and have you guys a very nice follow-up episode. Wouldn't that be a nice little treat? So I think that is probably a good place to stop. I'm pretty happy with that episode and pretty impressed with my energy, because I honestly didn't know what to talk about, but I don't remember the topic I was thinking of last night. Maybe I'll mention it next episode. Anyways, it's been Schla, but now it's time to buy Schla, so see you Schla.